I never thought I'd hear those words come from my own children, but that morning, as I stood in my daughter's living room, holding the walking stick she insisted I start using, my son looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Dad, you're old now. You should stop making decisions. Just sign the papers." The papers he slid across the table weren't harmless. They were property transfer documents, selling the land my late wife and I spent 40 years building, the land where we raised them, the land they promised they'd protect. My daughter didn't even look up from her phone. She just laughed. "Don't make it difficult, Dad. It's not like you'll need anything soon." I froze, my hands shook, not because I was weak, but because in that moment I realized something awful. My own children didn't see me as a father anymore. They saw me as an obstacle, the driver they hired for me, without asking, waited at the door, staring at the floor, embarrassed to witness what was happening. My son-in-law smirked and tapped the documents with a pen. "Come on, it's better this way. We'll manage everything. You just relax and enjoy your remaining years." That hit me like a punch. I wanted to shout. I wanted to slam the table, but instead, I calmly put the pen down and said, "I'm not signing anything today." Their smiles vanished instantly. My daughter snapped. "Why, your brain doesn't work the same anymore. Dad, please. Don't ruin our plans." Plans, plural. That's when it became clear. They had been discussing this behind my back for months. Maybe years, but what they didn't know, what none of them even imagined, was that I wasn't the helpless old man they thought I was, because 3 days earlier, my lawyer handed me a sealed folder. Inside it was a truth I had kept hidden from everyone, including my own children. $42 million estate, every asset, every deed, every investment, all protected, all under my control, and all about to change their lives forever. They thought they could insult me, corner me, and take everything I built, but they forgot one thing. I may be old, but I'm not worthless, and soon they were going to learn that the hard way. I always believed I had raised good children. Not perfect, no child is, but good. My late wife, Maria, and I poured everything into them. Our time, our energy, our sacrifices, our quiet dreams. My son, Amir, was the older one, strong, headed, always certain he'd be the man of the house one day. As a boy, he used to hold my hand when we crossed the street and tell me, "One day, Papa, I'll take care of you." I still remember those words. They sting differently now. My daughter, Sana, was the gentle one. At least she used to be. She was the kind of child who would hug me 3 times before school and make little cards that said, "Daddy is my hero." But somewhere along the way, after marriage, after wealth, after influence, those warm hugs turned into cold greetings, and those cards were replaced with calculated smiles. Then came the in-laws. Ah, yes, the in-laws. People underestimate the power of influence, especially when the influence comes wrapped in expensive suits and opinions coated with sugar. Sana's husband, Hasib, always acted too polished. The kind who thinks he's subtle when, in fact, everyone in the room can see the greed in his eyes. He treated me respectfully, at first, but the moment he realized I wasn't handing out assets like Eid envelopes, his tone changed. My son's wife, Komal, was no better. She didn't bother pretending. From the first day, I could sense she saw me as a stepping stone, a temporary obstacle between her and the lifestyle she dreamed of. Still, I tried to stay patient. I tried to be the calm father my wife always admired. But patience is a luxury that starts to crack when the people you love begin treating you like a burden. After Maria passed away, the distance grew even faster. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became excuses. Celebrations became obligations. And when they did come over, they whispered in corners. They exchanged looks when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I'd walk into a room and conversations would suddenly stop. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Maybe grief was making me sensitive. Maybe getting older was just changing how I saw the world. But the truth was simpler. They were planning something, and even though I tried to deny it, the signs were everywhere. One afternoon, while I was watering Maria's roses, the one she planted the year our son was born, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer, Mr. Hassan, a man I trusted like a brother. His message was short but heavy. "We need to meet. It's important. Important." That word chilled me more than any insult my children had ever thrown at me. Why? Because Hassan was not a man who used such words lightly, and the only time he ever called something important was when it involved my estate or a threat to it. I dried my hands, heart beating faster than it should for a man my age. And in that moment I knew, whatever my children were planning, it had already begun. 2 days after the message from Hassan, my children invited me to Sana's house for what they called a family discussion. The timing was suspicious. The tone was suspicious. Even the way the message was typed. Formal, cold, almost like a business meeting. Felt wrong. Still, I went. Not because I trusted them, but because I needed to see what they were planning. When I arrived, their house looked unusually prepared. Not warm, not welcoming. Prepared. The lights were too bright, the furniture too perfectly arranged, and everyone was already seated as if waiting for a presentation to begin. There was no chai on the table, no snacks, none of the usual gestures of hospitality my daughter once took pride in. Sana gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, sit here," she said, tapping a specific chair at the end of the long dining table. Not next to her, not opposite her, at the end alone. Hasib stood behind her, hands in his pockets, pretending to be casual but watching me like I was a business deal he was negotiating. Amir was on the other side, flipping through a folder. Komal sat next to him, arms crossed, as if she was there to make sure the plan went smoothly. Something inside me tightened. "Is everything all right?" I asked, of course. Amir said quickly, too quickly. "We just need to talk about future arrangements. Future arrangements. Another phrase that could mean 1,000 things. And most of them bad." Sana leaned forward. "Dad, we've been thinking. You're living alone. It's not safe. You're getting older, and we're worried about you." Worried? If only their eyes matched their words, Hasib added, "Managing assets is hard at your age. You need support, guidance, people who understand modern systems." Komal nodded, her voice sharp. "We just want what's best for you, and for the family, for the family." That was the first honest thing she'd said, because I knew exactly which family she meant. I kept listening, letting them speak, because sometimes silence exposes people more than questions. Then Amir placed the folder on the table and slid it toward me. "Dad," he said, clearing his throat, "we've already discussed everything. It's simple paperwork, just some signatures for better management. I didn't touch the folder. I didn't even blink. Instead, I looked around the room. And I realized something. Every one of them avoided eye contact. They were scared I might refuse, scared their plan might fail. "What paperwork?" I finally asked. Sana inhaled deeply. "We'll explain, but first, you need to see the documents." Her voice trembled for a second, not from guilt, but from impatience. I reached for the folder slowly, but before opening it, I looked up at them. Before I read anything, I said, "Tell me one thing. Why did you call me here today?" The silence that followed was heavy. Awkward, tense, and then Amir said the words that revealed everything. "Dad, it's time we take responsibility for your properties." There it was, not even disguised, not softened, just raw greed wrapped in false concern. I opened the folder, and what I saw inside made my heart drop. It wasn't support. It wasn't guidance. It was a complete transfer of ownership, everything, every asset, every property, every business share. Signed over to them. My children had brought me there, to take everything. I stared at the stack of documents in front of me. Pages and pages of legal language, property lists, asset breakdowns, every line crafted to shift ownership from me. To them, my hands felt cold, not because I was afraid, but because the betrayal I had suspected was finally right there on paper. Sana leaned forward and tapped the top page. Her voice was gentle, too gentle, like someone speaking to a patient in a hospital. "Dad, don't stress yourself reading everything. We've already gone through it. It's all standard. Just sign. Just sign." Amir pushed a pen toward me. "Dad, come on. It's not a big deal. We'll handle the responsibilities now. You can relax. Relax." That word again. They were talking as if I were already halfway in the grave. Komal added, "It's better this way. You don't need to worry about money anymore. We've got it. I looked at her. Ely looked at her. Her eyes weren't caring, they were calculating. My silence made them uneasy. Hasib cleared his throat. Uncle, we've planned it all. This will make things easier for everyone, and honestly, you've done enough. Let us take over. Let us take over. The phrase was delivered with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly, and set the pen down. What made you think I'm incapable of managing my own life? I asked quietly. Amir exchanged a quick glance with Sana, the kind of look two guilty kids share when caught. Dad, Sana began, we're not saying you're incapable, we're just saying you're not young anymore. Hasib nodded, pretending to be wise. That's right, and honestly, you shouldn't stress about finances at your age. These things can get complicated. I felt a sharp sting in my chest, not from age, not from weakness, but from a single, painful truth. My own children saw me as a burden. Not a father, not a man who built their entire world, just a burden. I rubbed my forehead and whispered, "Do you think I don't understand what this is?" Silence. Then I continued, louder, firmer, "You want my properties. You want control. You want everything your mother and I built." No, Dad, it's not like that. Amir tried to interrupt, but I raised a hand. That message you sent. I said, "This sudden meeting, these documents, the whispers in the hallway when I visited last month, the rushed phone calls, the way you stopped inviting me for dinner after I asked about the old house." Their eyes widened. They hadn't expected me to notice. They thought the old man wouldn't catch on. "You think I'm clueless?" I asked. Komal looked away. Hasib scratched his neck. Sana's lips tightened. Finally, Amir sighed, frustrated. "Dad, stop making this dramatic. We're just trying to secure the future, our future." There it was, the truth, finally spoken, not my future, theirs. I pushed the folder back toward them. "I'm not signing anything," I said calmly. The room froze. Sana's expression darkened. "Why are you making this difficult?" Hasib's voice hardened. "Uncle, you're being unreasonable." Komal muttered under her breath, "This is why we needed to do this." And Amir, the son I once carried on my shoulders, slammed his palm on the table. "Dad, don't make us force this issue." Force, that word confirmed everything. I stood up slowly. "You've already forced it." I said, "You just didn't expect me to notice." Their faces turned pale as I walked toward the door. Because they didn't know something very important. I wasn't alone in this. My lawyer already knew, and the next steps had already begun. People think betrayal happens suddenly. One moment everything is fine, and the next your world collapses. But that's not how it works. Betrayal starts quietly with small whispers, half-finished sentences, and doors that close a little too quickly. After that disastrous meeting at Sana's house, I went home emotionally drained. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room listening to the clock tick, replaying every strange moment from the last year, every canceled dinner, every rushed call, every time they told me, "Don't worry about it, Dad." I realized it wasn't sudden. It was planned, and I wasn't imagining it. The next morning, I visited my oldest friend, Farouk. He had been my neighbor for 30 years, a man who had seen my children grow up and had watched me build my businesses from scratch. He poured tea for both of us and said, "You look troubled. What happened?" I didn't hide anything. I told him everything. The documents, the pressure, the coldness in their eyes. Farouk didn't look surprised. And that scared me. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Brother, I didn't want to tell you unless I had to, but since things have gone this far." He placed his cup down. "I heard your children talking last month, at the cafe near the market." My heart tightened. What did they say? He looked uncomfortable, as if the words physically pained him. They were discussing how to manage your properties before someone else gets to them. Someone else? I asked. "Yes," he nodded. "They think you're too old to make good decisions, that you might leave things to charity or give assets to people they don't approve of." I felt a wave of heat rush up my neck. Farouk continued, "And your son-in-law." He said something that really bothered me. I braced myself. He said, "If the old man doesn't agree, we'll make him. He doesn't understand how things work now. Make me, just like Amir had hinted." Farouk reached out and put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, brother. I thought maybe they were joking, but after what you just told me, I don't think they were. I looked down at my hands, veins prominent, fingers trembling, not out of weakness, but out of anger. My own children, talking about me like I was some stubborn obstacle standing between them and a prize. As I drove back home, Farouk's words kept echoing in my mind, but something else happened that evening, something that confirmed my worst fears. I got home earlier than expected, and as I walked toward the front door, I heard voices inside my house, voices that shouldn't have been there. I froze, listening. It was Amir and Sana. They were in my living room, whispering urgently. And then I heard Amir say, "We need to get this done before he changes anything, before someone else gets involved, before someone else gets involved, before someone else gets involved." I quietly stepped back outside. There it was, proof. They weren't worried about my future. They were worried about losing their chance, and now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. The day after I overheard my children whispering in my own home, I received a call from Hasib, my daughter's husband. He rarely called me directly. If he did, it meant one of two things. Either he wanted something, or he wanted something badly. "Uncle," he said cheerfully, "I'm nearby. Thought I'd stop by for tea." Tea? I almost laughed. Hasib didn't drink tea. He barely drank water unless it came from a designer bottle, but I let him come. Sometimes the best way to see a person clearly is to simply give them enough room to talk. He arrived in a fancy suit, a watch too expensive for his salary, and a smile that didn't match the tension in his eyes. He sat down on my sofa as if he owned it. So, he began casually. "Sana told me about yesterday, that whole meeting." He waved his hand like it was a small misunderstanding. "I'm sure it must have felt overwhelming for you." He continued, "A lot of decisions, a lot of paperwork." I raised an eyebrow. "I can handle paperwork, of course," he said quickly. "Of course you can, but you see, things have changed. Laws are different now. Managing assets isn't as easy as it used to be. It's stressful for someone your age." Your age? He said it with a softness that was meant to insult without sounding like an insult. He leaned forward. "Uncle, listen, I'm not like Amir. I understand you. I respect you. I want what's best for the family, which is why I came here today." There it was the reason he showed up. He cleared his throat. "I think you should reconsider the documents. If you sign them, everything will flow smoothly. No complications. We'll take care of the properties. You can enjoy a peaceful life. Peaceful life meaning, give us control and you won't have to worry about us again." I said nothing. He took my silence as hesitation, not suspicion. Then he made a mistake. He stood up and walked toward the hallway. "I'll just grab some water," he said. But he didn't go to the kitchen. He turned toward the study, my wife's old room, where I kept personal files locked away. I followed quietly. From the hallway, I saw him jiggle the doorknob. When it didn't open, he crouched and checked the hinge, almost as if scouting how to break it later. My blood boiled, but I didn't confront him, not yet. He returned to the living room with an innocent smile. Door was locked. He said lightly, eyes scanning my face, "You should keep things accessible. Makes life easier." I sat down slowly, my voice steady. "Hasib," I said, "I don't think you came for tea or for conversation." He froze. I continued, "You came to see what else you could take." His face twitched, panic, guilt, irritation, all in 1 second. He forced a laugh. "Uncle, you misunderstand and know." I cut him off. "I finally understand everything." He stayed silent, and that silence told me more truth than his words ever could. As he left, he said quietly, "Just think about it before things get complicated, complicated." A threat dressed as concern. When he closed the door behind him, the house felt colder. My children wanted my assets, but my son-in-law, he wanted all of it, and now, I knew his plan. After Hasib left, the house felt different. As if his presence had left a stain in the air, I sat alone on the sofa, my wife's favorite cushion beside me, thinking about how things had reached this point. My children, my blood, were plotting against me. And the man my daughter married was now leading the charge. I rubbed my eyes, trying to calm myself, but fate didn't give me even an hour of peace. That same evening, Sana and Amir arrived unannounced. No phone call, no warning, just the loud sound of their car doors slamming and their hurried footsteps approaching my front door. They barged in without knocking. something they had never done before Maria passed away. "Dad," Amir said sharply, as if he were the parent and I was the child, "we need to talk, now." Sana crossed her arms. "We heard you argue with Hasib today. Why, he was only trying to help. Help." The word made my jaw tighten. "I didn't argue," I replied calmly. "He came here to pressure me, and he tried to enter my study." Sana's face hardened. "Why is that a problem? What are you hiding in there?" "What I keep in my private room," I said slowly, "is none of your concern." Amir scoffed. "Dad, you're being paranoid." "Paranoid? The same word greedy people use when they want you to doubt yourself." I stood up, tired of their tone. This needs to stop, all of it. But they weren't listening anymore. Amir stepped closer, voice rising. "You're making this difficult for no reason. We're trying to secure the family's assets before something happens to you." "Before something happens," I repeated, stunned. "What do you think is going to happen?" Sana sighed dramatically. "Dad, be realistic. You're old, you forget things, you make mistakes, and you're living alone. What if you do something foolish with the properties?" There it was. Not even sugar-coated. I looked at both of them, my own children, and realized I didn't recognize them anymore. "You think I'll ruin my own estate?" I asked softly. Amir didn't hesitate. "Yes, you might." That sentence shattered something inside me. Then Sana added, "And honestly, Dad, if you had handled everything properly earlier, we wouldn't be in this mess." My mess, me, the man who built everything they had. My voice cracked slightly as I replied, "Everything I own. I built for you, for your future, your mother and I." "Mom isn't here anymore," Amir cut in bluntly, "and things are different now." The room fell cold. That was the moment. The exact second something inside me broke. Not my strength, not my will. Something deeper, the invisible thread that holds a parent's heart together. I picked up my keys and walked past them. "Where are you going?" Sana demanded. "To see someone who actually respects me." I said. Amir scoffed. "Who, that old lawyer of yours?" I didn't answer. I just opened the door, stepped outside, and said, "You'll find out soon enough." As I drove toward my lawyer's office, one thought echoed in my mind. This ends now. The drive to my lawyer's office felt longer than usual. Not because of distance, but because of the weight sitting on my chest. Amir's words kept replaying. "You're old. You might make mistakes." And Sana's voice layered over it. "You're hiding something." They thought they knew everything about my life, but they knew only what I allowed them to see. When I reached Mr. Hassan's office, he was already waiting, standing by his desk with a folder in his hands. He wasn't a man of many words, but even he looked concerned. "You came faster than I expected," he said quietly. "I didn't have the luxury to wait," I replied. He nodded and gestured for me to sit. For a moment, we just looked at each other, two old men who had seen enough life to understand greed when it appeared. Then he opened the folder. "We need to revise everything," he said. "Your children are making moves behind your back. I've heard things. I know." I whispered. I heard it with my own ears. Hassan sighed deeply. "I'm sorry. I hoped it wouldn't come to this." "So did I." I said, "But they left me no choice." He pushed the folder toward me. Inside were documents, thick, detailed, carefully structured. Not the ones my children had seen. Not the ones they even knew existed. These were the documents that held my real legacy, the part of my life my children never learned about. I leaned back, remembering the journey that led me here. My wife and I had built everything from nothing. When we started our first business, we lived in a 2-room home. She used to sew clothes at night to save money. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple, just to keep food on the table. But here was the truth my children never wanted to understand. I never told them the full story of my success. They assumed what they saw. The house, the properties, the shops, was everything. But my wife and I had always believed in quiet growth, silent investments, and secrets known only to us and the man sitting in front of me. Over the decades, our small investments turned into large ones. Real estate multiplied. Hidden accounts grew. 2 businesses we started were sold for amounts my children never even imagined. My late wife had insisted, "Don't tell the kids yet. Let them build their own identity first." But they didn't build anything. They just waited, and while they waited, assuming they would inherit everything easily, I kept building. What they thought was a simple collection of properties worth a few million was actually a vast, diversified estate worth $42 million. Not one of them suspected it, not even for a second, and now they were demanding I hand it all over. Hassan closed the folder gently and asked, "Are you ready to protect what you built?" I nodded slowly. Yes, it's time. But protecting it wouldn't be simple. It required a will they didn't expect, terms they wouldn't like, and consequences they could never imagine. The next step would change everything. And my children were not prepared for what was coming. Mr. Hassan closed the door to his office and locked it. That's when I knew he had something serious to say. "We need to rewrite everything," he said. "Not just update rewrite." I nodded. "That's why I'm here." He pulled out a clean stack of papers, untouched, untainted, and free of my children's schemes. "Before we begin," he continued, "you must tell me clearly, who do you want responsible for your estate when you're gone?" The question hit me harder than I expected. Not because I feared death, I had lived a full life, but because I never imagined asking myself who, among my own children, was worthy of my trust. I took a slow breath and said, "None of them, not the ones pressuring me, not the ones whispering behind my back." Hassan nodded calmly, as if he had expected that answer. "Then we'll assign control to the trustees, the professionals you chose years ago." Professionals my wife and I handpicked long before our children developed the greed they now nurtured. He slid the first document toward me. "This is the foundation of the new will. It will distribute assets based on conduct, not entitlement. Conduct." A word my children never imagined could affect their inheritance. Before we finish, Hassan continued, "I need to ask you one question, a difficult one." "What is it?" He folded his hands. "Do you want a punishment clause?" A punishment clause? A legal term that meant consequences, real, irreversible consequences for anyone who tried to force, manipulate, threaten, or coerce me into changing my will. My heartbeat slowed. I thought of Amir slamming his hand on the table. Sana demanding, "Why are you making this difficult?" Hasib trying to break into my study. And then I remembered the whispered words I heard in my own home. "Before he changes anything. Before someone else gets involved." Yes. They deserved consequences. Add the clause, I said firmly. Hassan wrote quickly, efficiently, like a man who had waited a long time for this decision. "The clause will state," he explained, "that any child who attempts to influence or pressure you into transferring property loses their inheritance entirely. Entirely." In one sentence, he had created the weapon that would protect me and expose them. We spent the next 3 hours drafting everything. Distribution of the $42M estate, shares of businesses, hidden investments, property deeds, conditions for access, protections against coercion, executor authority, trustee oversight piece by piece. I rebuilt my future. Without them, when the final document was ready, Hassan placed it in a sealed envelope and pushed it toward me. "This," he said, "is the version of your will they will never expect." I exhaled deeply. It wasn't relief, it was something stronger, control. For the first time in months, I felt in control. Hassan stood up. "There's one last thing," he said. "You need to decide how the final announcement will happen." I smiled slowly, the first genuine smile in weeks. "Oh, I already know how." Because my children wanted a meeting, a discussion, a confrontation, and I was going to give it to them. One they would never forget. After finalizing the new will with Mr. Hassan, I returned home feeling a strange mix of relief and tension. Relief because I had finally taken control of my legacy, and tension because I knew my children would never accept this without a fight. I spent the next few days quietly preparing for the confrontation ahead. I called a family meeting, not at their homes but at my lawyer's office where I could control the environment. The invitation was brief but clear. "We need to discuss the estate. Everyone must attend." As the day approached, my phone buzzed with messages from my children and their spouses. Thinly veiled threats, pleas, and empty promises filled the screen, but I was unmoved. This time, I wasn't going to be pushed around. I also reconnected with old friends who had witnessed my journey, people who reminded me of my worth beyond the greed and the drama. Their support became my strength. On the morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully. No arrogance, no anger. Just calm confidence. I wanted my children to see that I was not broken or defeated. I was ready. When everyone arrived, I noticed the looks, surprise, impatience, even a hint of fear. They had expected an easy victory, but they walked into a different game entirely. Mr. Hassan opened the session by explaining the importance of the documents they were about to see. Then I calmly revealed the new will, my true estate, worth $42 million, far beyond what they had assumed. As I spoke, I watched their faces change, from smug certainty to disbelief, then to desperation. This was the moment they finally understood that their schemes had failed, that the parent they tried to undermine was still in control. And just as important, they learned that respect is earned, not demanded. The moment the new will was revealed, the room filled with stunned silence. My children stared at the papers as if they were reading a foreign language. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. I could see the gears turning in their heads, how this would disrupt their plans, their easy inheritance. But I didn't back down. This was my legacy, and I was reclaiming it with every word I spoke. I've made it clear, I said firmly, that control of my estate depends on respect and responsibility, not just blood. Amir's face reddened. You can't do this. This is unfair. I shook my head. Fair is what you all showed me when you tried to force me to sign over everything. Fair is what I'm showing now. Sana glared but didn't interrupt. Mr. Hassan explained the legal protections built into the new will clauses that would disinherit anyone trying to manipulate or pressure me. My children realized that this was not just a document, it was a boundary they couldn't cross. Over the next few weeks, I took steps to secure my properties, changed account signatories, and worked closely with trusted professionals to oversee my assets. My children's phone calls became less frequent, their tones softer, more cautious. Some tried to negotiate, others tried to charm, but I stood firm. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace, because I wasn't just protecting money. I was protecting my dignity, and my children learned that respect is not a right, it's earned. After I took control of everything, the atmosphere in the family changed, cold, tense, and unspoken. My children stopped calling as often. Invitations to dinners and gatherings disappeared. It was as if they were punishing me for standing up for myself. But I stood my ground. One day, I received a letter from Amir. His tone desperate, almost pleading. Dad, let's talk. We want to make things right. I knew better. This wasn't a sincere apology. It was a test, a last attempt to reclaim what they thought was theirs by birthright. I replied simply, respect isn't bought back with words. It's shown with actions. Days later, Sana sent a message, trying to guilt me about family unity. But I remembered every cold word, every betrayal. Some family friends whispered behind their backs, warning them that greed was costing them more than money. It was costing their relationship with me. The biggest consequence, my children began to realize that money isn't everything. Their greed had pushed them to the edge of losing a father they took for granted. Over time, I saw small changes. A call here, a visit there, but only if I was strong enough to forgive and clear boundaries were respected. It was a hard lesson for all of us, but one I'm proud to have taught, because in the end, respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. The day of the final family meeting arrived. I gathered everyone in the lawyer's office once more, but this time, the atmosphere was different, tense, uncertain, even fearful. They all sat around the long table, faces pale, avoiding my eyes. After everything, I was the one who held the cards. I started by acknowledging those who had stood by me, the loyal friends, the trusted employees, the quiet supporters who never wavered. For those who respected me, who showed loyalty and kindness, I said, you will be rewarded fairly. Your dedication means everything. Eyes flicked toward Amir and Sana, who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then I turned to them. For those who disrespected me, who tried to force their way, who betrayed my trust, I let the silence fill the room. You will receive only a symbolic minimum, just enough to remember what was lost. Their shock was palpable. Amir's jaw clenched, Sana's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but frustration. I'm not punishing you out of spite, I explained. I'm doing what is right, because respect and integrity matter more than blood. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I stood up slowly, smoothing my jacket. This meeting is over. Without looking back, I walked out of the room. The stunned silence behind me was louder than any argument. I left them with their regrets, their greed, and a lesson they would never forget. Because sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is walk away. After that final meeting, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For years, I had carried the burden of their disrespect and greed, but now the control was mine again, truly mine. I began to rebuild my life, not around their demands, but around my own peace. I traveled to places I'd always dreamed of visiting, but never found the time. Quiet beaches, mountain retreats, old cities rich with history. Every trip reminded me of something important. Life is more than money or possessions. It's about moments, memories, and the people who truly matter. I reconnected with old friends, those who had stood by me in good times and bad. We shared stories, laughed until our sides hurt, and reminded each other what loyalty really means. My days became fuller, not because of work, but because of living. But just when I thought I had left the past behind, my phone rang one evening. It was Sana. Her voice was shaky, and I could hear tears. "Dad, I need to talk. I'm sorry, can we meet?" For the first time in a long time, her words reached me. Not as a demand, but as a plea. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked out the window and thought, maybe this was the beginning of something new. Or maybe it was just another test. Either way, I knew one thing for sure this time: I wouldn't be a victim. When Sana arrived at my house the next day, I wasn't sure what to expect. Would it be another demand? Another fight, or maybe just empty words? But the moment I saw her, everything changed. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked smaller, less sure, more vulnerable. "Dad," she began, voice trembling, "I've been thinking a lot, about everything, about how I treated you, how we treated you." I waited quietly. I was wrong. We were wrong. We didn't see the pain we caused, or the respect we took for granted. Her honesty caught me off guard. I realized then how much she had been carrying inside: guilt, regret, and maybe hope. Amir followed soon after, and though his apology was rougher, less polished, it was genuine. "I thought I knew what was best," he admitted, "but I forgot to think about what you wanted." The room was heavy with emotion, words we hadn't spoken for years now filling the silence. I didn't jump into forgiveness. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I told them this: I forgive you, but that doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. I set clear boundaries: no more pressure, no more manipulation. They had to earn their place, not just in my will, but in my life. As they nodded, I felt a flicker of hope, a hope that maybe this family, broken by greed and betrayal, could start to heal. But before the day ended, I knew I had one more decision to make, one final choice about the inheritance that would define the rest of our lives. That evening, after everyone had left, I sat down and reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the apology, and the hard-earned peace. I realized that the money, the properties, and the estate were never truly the point. The real inheritance was the lesson I wanted to leave behind: respect, dignity, loyalty. These were the values that no amount of money could buy, no document could enforce, no inheritance could replace. I thought about my children, the ones who fought me, and the ones who stood by me. I understood now that wealth reveals character. It doesn't create it, and it's respect that matters most, not the zeros in a bank account. I made my final decision about the inheritance, but more importantly, I made peace with what really mattered. The family I had lost to greed could still be rebuilt with honesty and love, if they chose to walk that path. I hope my story teaches this to others. You can lose everything to greed and betrayal, but you can never lose the dignity you hold inside. And sometimes, standing firm is the bravest thing you can do. Because in the end, respect matters more than money, and now they know it too.